Am I the antagonist for sending a story to a podcast my partner listens to? So, my wife, age 21, and I, age 22, are a lesbian couple. She comes from a super religious family and I don't. My family was very nice to me when I came out a few years ago, especially on my mom's side, because her brother is also gay. Besides that, when my wife came out, her grandma, let's call her Anna, basically started saying it was the worst thing that ever happened in her life. I think she forgot that her husband was a gigantic asshole. But her mom eventually calmed things down and was actually grateful that my wife decided to come out and not do something bad that would haunt the family for years because of the guilt. Her sister and her husband have been the most supportive of all, and we actually like each other very much and get along very well in gatherings, unlike the rest of my wife's family, that doesn't like me that much. But Anna thinks the rest of her family, her sisters, nieces, and nephews, don't know about my wife and I being a gay couple. In the last holidays, we were supposed to cross the country to visit Anna and stay with her for a few days. Safe to say I wasn't the most excited person in the world to go on the trip, but my wife was so thrilled to see her grandma that I pushed my feelings aside and was 100% in just to make her happy. But that's the moment things went downhill. Anna straight out told my wife she didn't want me to come along, and that she would be very uncomfortable with my presence, and that her sisters shouldn't know about my wife's situation. Then I got mad. Not even because she was rejecting me, but because she was neglecting my wife and her feelings, without considering the awesome person that she is when she isn't hiding her true self to please her family. So my wife decided to go on the trip, knowing her family was gonna trash talk about her behind her back and to her face, and knowing she would be miserable there without me around. Me and our friends tried to talk her out of it, but she didn't listen, because she'd rather be around them and feel awful than to listen to someone who just wants her to be well. Well, then I had an idea to tell this story to someone I know for sure she would listen, a woman from a podcast she is obsessed with. Probably not the best idea of all time, but it was the best I had at the moment. And so I did. The woman read the story, contacted me, and wants to tell it on her podcast next week. Am I being a jerk for trying to talk sense into her? And for wanting her to listen? Am I the AE here? You're the antagonist. Your wife made a different choice about seeing her family, and that is her right. Set your boundaries and communicate your feelings to her directly without spreading your business around. Allow her to make her own decisions about cutting ties with her family. Am I the antagonist for not choosing to go with my parent? I, Jenny, 15 years old, never really knew my real father. My mother and my stepfather, who I will call father, met when I was a baby. My father has a daughter, Christine, 16 years old, and we get along very nicely, but she used to live mostly with her mother because my father lost custody. We all lived in my father's house as he took us in when I was a baby, so for me, this has always been my home. They got married a few years later, and my father adopted me. This fall, my sister did something dumb and got pregnant. Long story short, her mother threw her out, and our father took her in and decided he would stay home with the baby that would be born this summer, and she has to stay in school. This caused conflict between my mother and father, and she asked my father to choose, her or his kid with the baby. My father told her that he would not abandon his daughter. Now what the story is about. My mother assumed I would go with her to my grandmother's place, but I told her that I wanted to stay in my home because my grandmother has a tiny apartment, and I didn't want to sleep on a couch with my mom. Also, I don't want to take a 20-minute train ride to school every day while the house is a 5-minute walk from school. My mother demanded that I go with her and told my father that he had to tell me to go, but he said that he would not force anyone to go anywhere, so she left. After that, I got messages from my mother and her sister, my grandmother called, and they were mad at me because I would rather choose to stay with a man that is basically a stranger. That kind of made me mad, because for me, he is not a stranger. I tried to explain that all my friends live in this town. Also, my father is the only person who could teach me math, as our math teacher sucks. Basically, I understand nothing in math class. I come home and my father explains to me and I totally get it. This is very important, as I have exams coming up this spring, and without my father teaching me, I would fail. I don't want to leave my home. I love my mother very much, but when I visit them in my grandmother's place, all she wants to talk about is that I should move there, and I could go to school in that little town. But they have only an elementary school, and the nearest high school would be the same school I am in elementary already. Relatives from my mother's side bombard my phone with messages. Meanwhile, my stepsister, father, and his mother all support me, and my friends support my decision. Am I the asshole? You're the antagonist. It's clear your mother is being unreasonable and causing unnecessary drama by involving others. Your father did nothing wrong, and it's important to remember he loves you just as much. Don't let her manipulate you into choosing sides. Consider spending time with both of them in a fair manner. Also, show some love for all punctuation marks, including commas. Am I the antagonist for not following through with my commitment to pay someone money that I owe them? Am I the asshole for not paying up? I was recently invited to a birthday party out of state by a friend of a friend. I don't know this person, but I've heard of them. It was a 2-hour drive for me. At the restaurant, myself and another person could not fit at the group table, and they did not accommodate us, so we had to just wait around until a two-top opened up near the group table, but we never got to join the group. I didn't complain because I wanted my friend to have a great birthday, and it's ultimately not about me. The next part of the event was actually not at this business, and we had to travel to another business across town. The next day, I drive home and everything seems normal. A couple days later, I get a text from the person that planned the party event. Keep in mind, although I met this person at the party briefly, I have never talked to or received a text message from them before. Party details were through the grapevine, which is why I had next to none. They're asking me if I can help pay for the event, since it was a couple $100s. I was shocked. I didn't get to enjoy eating with the group, and I even brought a gift and alcohol. Now, she's asking for money? I thought the common social convention was to let people know that there is a cost up front. I politely told her my reasoning for not taking responsibility for the cost of the party. If I had known there was a cost associated with attending, I would have likely declined due to all the other costs associated with traveling and not really getting to see my friend that the party was planned for. They never replied to my message, but I assumed they thought I was unreasonable and unfair. I soon learned from another friend of mine that other people were texted and asked for money as well. On principle, I was not going to give her the money. It's poor taste in my opinion, and I wasn't involved enough to take any responsibility for the cost I didn't even know about. I thought it would blow over and they live in another state so I wouldn't have to see them. More recently, I found out that our mutual friend found out about it. I sort of expected them to see my point of view but was shocked when they said, well, I think you two both thought you were right, and then cited my obsessive-compulsive disorder as a reason why I want things a certain way. That also took me aback. They then added that we always ask each other for money afterwards. I have never heard of that being a social rule of thumb, and would never expect that of anyone. I don't think I did anything wrong, but now it seems like their friend says I'm an asshole, and my friend excuses my assholeness as my obsessive-compulsive disorder. Am I the asshole? Not the antagonist for sure. It's unreasonable for them to expect you to cover the costs without any prior notice or agreement, especially since you weren't even part of the main party. This situation was poorly planned and handled, and you shouldn't feel obligated to pay for it. Cut ties if necessary, not worth the hassle. My grandparent is cruel to my parent. How can I help my parent? I made some minor changes to protect privacy. Anyway, my elderly grandmother has been living on her own since 2019 in Ohio, and before my grandfather passed, she was always a bit depressive and never outwardly super friendly. She had a bad fall a couple of years ago, and my grandmother was stuck in a terrible state-run facility up there and begged my mom to help her. She does not have dementia nor any documented condition like that. We moved her from Ohio to our state, and since then my mom has been paying for it. My grandma treats her like a servant and treats all of us like we're trying to steal her money, even though we don't have the money to pay for her rent, the medical bills, etc. She has benefits from Medicare and my grandfather's pension. She's just never had to manage her own stuff. She was a stay-at-home mom for her adult life. My mother manages her finances and has never taken anything extra from her. Recently, it's gotten much worse, with constant rude put-downs, my grandma calling me to complain about my mother, saying my mom isn't calling her and isn't helping her even though she has full access to grocery delivery. My mom always sends and delivers her packages and groceries because she doesn't know how doesn't care to order things online or via phone. I try to defend my mom to my grandmother. I tell her that my mother tries hard and does more than any of her siblings, her two sons who she defends endlessly despite them not calling her all throughout COVID, etc. Haven't lifted a finger except to actually steal from her. My aunt helps, but lives in another state as well. Today is my mother's birthday. She works full-time, takes care of my toddler nephew along with my father. She has not one but 2 advanced degrees. And today she is crying on her birthday because once more my grandma called her to berate her. It makes me sick to see my intelligent, empathetic, and kind mother reduced to an insecure shell because we brought this witch down from the Midwest. How can I help her? We, my dad and myself, are always telling her to ignore her, let us deal with her instead, etc. But my mother is becoming more and more depressed and I can't stand it. What could I do to take the strain off of her? I was thinking of contacting my uncle and trying to guilt him into taking his mom for a few months, but I don't think he cares. I already scheduled a haircut for my grandma, and I'll handle her groceries and any Amazon packages next week since I don't want my mom to have to deal with her. But what else can I actually do to help my mom? It sounds like your grandmother is displaying concerning behavior that could be a sign of early dementia, but that doesn't excuse her treating others poorly. Encouraging your mom to seek therapy and setting boundaries with your grandmother could help improve the situation. Checking for therapists in your area on Psychology Today, based on your zip code and insurance information, might be a good place to start. How do I ask my spouse to not make me things? Hey everyone, my 24-year-old female husband, 24-year-old male, and I have been together for 7 years, married for 2. My husband is a true maker. He loves hand-making things, 3D printing, woodworking, sewing, and so on. He is also a designer, so he is very good at it. Our garage is filled to the brim with tools and materials to facilitate his hobby. On to the problem. I already know I sound like an ass, trust me, I am aware. He is also always telling me he can make things for me if I ask, and he usually does make the things I ask. but he always does is a little wrong. Some examples. I asked him to make me a pen holder for my desk, a large wood block with holes to store individual pens and markers to hold all the pens I use regularly. I was thinking 4 inches x 10 inches. Didn't have to be exact, but I wanted it to hold everything I needed individually. He made me a holder that's 2.5 inches x 6 inches x 2 inches and made of oak and bent, powder-coated aluminum. It's beautiful, could win awards if he submit it, but it has 15 holes for pens, only 3 of which will hold my actual regularly used pens, 4 holes which will hold narrower pens, and the rest, 8, are made for pencils. I don't use pencils for work. Now I have this incredible one-of-a-kind piece of art that sits on my desk that I can only use half of, only holds 1/5 of the pens and markers I use daily, and I can never get rid of it. I love it, but it is so far from what I asked for it's almost insulting. Another example, one of my hobbies is doing my own nails. Gels, acrylic extensions, the works. I asked him to make me a holder for my nail drill bits. He gets full creative freedom, but my only request is for it to close securely because my nail supplies are in boxes that need to be brought out every time I need to do my nails, and I often travel with them. He asked if it was okay if it was held close by a strap or a band. I said that was fine. He made me a beautiful solid wood and 3D printed box that was held closed by tiny magnets. No strap or band, no latch, just magnets that will bump open if it's jangled in a box, releasing all of my tiny and fragile drill bits into the forgotten pits of the bottom of my nail box. Again, beautiful and incredibly designed. My sisters rave about how lucky I am and how pretty the box is. But again, not what I asked for. I love it, but now I have to use this box to hold my drill bits that does not work in one of the main ways I need it to work. I feel like this is what happens every time he makes me something. He makes things for work designed exactly to spec all the time. Is he just messing with me? At this point, I don't want him to make me anything. How do I tell him I don't want him to make me things if he won't make it the way I ask? If I want something almost perfect, I can just get it on Amazon. The point of him designing handmaking is customization, right? Am I just being a brat? Also, secondary question. Men, what the actual heck? TL doctor, my husband hand makes thing for me, but always a little wrong. I don't want him to make stuff if it isn't going to do what I want. How about giving him genuine feedback and communicating your practical needs, rather than assuming he should already know? It's normal for people to struggle with details on items they don't use or have experience with. Asking for modifications or testing before finalizing the design can prevent practical mistakes and ensure the end result meets your specific needs. Partner, 28, and I, 30, partner is friends with exer. My question is, are these signs that my boyfriend doesn't have strong boundaries with his ex, and what should I do? Does it make sense that I struggle with them two hanging out? Okay, so I fully can support platonic friendships, and I think my boyfriend should have them. I want him to. The reality is he is friends with his former girlfriend, which in some ways could be okay, but the context here is important. Him and his former girlfriend dated for a year, and she broke up with him. They broke up 3 years before we started dating. When we started dating, he frequently talked about a girl, and I just assumed they were close friends. It was a bit odd sometimes, but he liked me and was open about it, so I figured it was fine. After a couple months of seeing each other, one day he canceled plans to see me because she was going to be out of town for a month, and I was like, okay. I hadn't met her, still haven't a year later, but figured it was fine again since he was open about it. Fast forward to a month later when she returned. My dad was getting surgery for cancer, and instead of being with me during that time, he decided to go watch football with her because they hadn't seen each other in a while. I was like, this feels like a moment you should chose me, and he told me I could tell him to stay, but I didn't feel comfortable doing that, so I said we could hang out after. After the game was over, he went home and didn't come see me and then told me it was his former girlfriend. I didn't feel like I had the full information of their friendship, and that really put me off. I told him this and asked questions about when they dated, etc. He basically just said they were friends first, it didn't work out, and then they became friends. I was like, okay. Months go by and I find out they frequently text each other, daily, all day. They talk about pooping, and he's the first person she calls when she needs anything, like when she's in the hospital or stressed. I then asked him again, like that it felt a bit intimate, and he said he only saw her as a friend. I find out her mom still texts him, etc. Then I learn a few months before him and I started dating. She wanted him back, and she was the reason why his last relationship didn't work out. His former girlfriend basically freaked out, and it really hurt the other girl. Now I'm like, again, this doesn't feel like the full story. He still doesn't feel comfortable telling her about me because he doesn't want her to get upset. He finally does, and supposedly she was fine with it. A year and a half later, there's still so many issues. I've tried to not control who he is friends with, but it all seems so fishy and like they didn't have enough boundaries. They are so emotionally reliant on each other. Him and I are great and align in so many other ways. It's frustrating that he can't let go of this. Recently, I asked if they could at least take some space from each other. They text a lot less and barely hang out anymore. But it feels like even I personally need some space from their emotionally charged friendship. Too long. Didn't read. My boyfriend is friends with his former girlfriend. What boundaries are fair for me to establish? Your boyfriend's behavior indicates he's more focused on maintaining a relationship with his ex rather than prioritizing you. The constant texting, emotional connection, and her attempts to win him back show serious red flags and boundary issues. You are deserving of someone who puts you first, so it may be time to move on and find a partner who values you above all else. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.